Hey there, guys. All right, today we are back with some more of the Great War, and this time we are on to week 207. The Gardeners of Salonica prepare a new offensive. Before we dive in, make sure you go and check out the links in the description box below. I would love if you join the Discord and follow me over at Twitch. And please do go check out the gaming channel here on YouTube. That's for where I upload the old streams and whatnot, because I can't keep them forever on good old Twitch. Now all that said, there's nothing really to talk about here at the beginning of the video. So let's go ahead and dive right in and see what chaos, great wars happening this week.
By now, there was a raging influenza
I wonder when, because we've seen the Germans halted. I think it's pretty much absolute that the Germans are now halted along the Western Front. So I am curious when the Allies, the Entente, will start pushing in.
epidemic ravaging both Central Powers and Allied armies, and we'll see more of that. But today I'd like to look at another type of illness, one not often talked about during the war, but one that affected soldiers in the millions: venereal disease.
Oh, my favorite topic.
I'm Indy Nidell. Welcome to the Great War. Last week on the Western Front came the Battle of Hamel. It was a small battle, but remarkable for being the first combined use of air power, tanks, infantry, and machine guns in one integrated battle plan. The Bulgarian and Ottoman citizenry were starving, and German High Command decided to ditch their foreign minister for daring to suggest that the war could not be won militarily. They certainly did not agree, and had already finalized their plans for the next phase of their Western Front offensive.
What I'm trying to figure, because I feel like it's safe to say that a lot of the time when people are so stubborn as to give up on a war like this, that it's because they stand to gain something from winning the war. What do Ludendorff what do those two what do the German High Command really gain from winning this war? I guess just just pride, I guess, is really all they get. I mean, sure, they might get more rewards heaped upon them after victory by the Kaiser, maybe. Maybe they'll get some more money, a nice lavish estate to retire to, paid for by the state. I don't know. But still, like, it really just does feel like pride is all that is in the minds of Ludendorff and the other German general, the one I forget the name of, the one that dies in 33.
They actually considered postponing it, though, because of the spread of flu among the German troops, but it will go ahead as planned. Illness was complicating things, though. I know we haven't spoke about it really, even though it's been growing and growing for the past couple of months. But by now, the Spanish flu had reached epidemic proportions. It was affecting both armies, but chronic malnutrition supposedly made it worse on the German side. Thousands of men were becoming too sick for duty. According to G.J. Meyer in A World Undone, as many as 2,000 per German division.
Ooh.
And just over the rest of 1918, 186,000 German soldiers would die of the flu. There was one battlefront where epidemic disease had been rampant the whole time, and which we haven't heard much from in a while, the Macedonian front. Now, I mentioned last month that Adolphe Guillaumat had been called home from that front to be military governor of Paris, and had been replaced as commander by Franchet, Desperate Frankie, Desperate. There was a nice irony here. The idea of the Army of the Orient to attack through the Balkans out of Salonica had actually been Desperate Frankie's idea in the first place back in 1914, when he had suggested it to French President Raymond Poincaré. However, by the time he'd actually gotten a proposal together, the Allies were occupied with the Dardanelles and then Gallipoli in that region. But still,
Man, Gallipoli feels like so long ago. And of course, in the context of the show, it is a long time ago, like 2-3 years. But for us watching this now, at least as I have been watching and reacting, series. That was what? I think last spring. Um, we were no. Wait, yes. No. Longer than last spring. Uh, because Gallipoli would have been 1915 into 19. Last spring we were dealing with the ends of Gallipoli. I think the evacuation. Goddamn, time goes by funky.
The multinational army at Salonica began building under Maurice Sarrail in late 1915 and was 300,000 men by the summer of 1916. There was some fighting that summer, as we saw, and then the stalemate resumed. But by 1917, there were 500,000 Allied troops there.
God damn.
However, by then, Salonica was something of a joke to the European command. German generals called it their largest internment camp, and Georges Clemenceau called the troops the gardeners of Salonica. Thing is, it was anything but pleasant there.
Oh.
Men by the hundreds of thousands had gotten malaria, which was endemic, and the city itself was no picnic. It had been part of the Ottoman Empire until just a few years ago, and thousands upon thousands of refugees from the Balkan Wars were living on top of each other in hellish slums. Well, anyhow, Guillemot had replaced Sarrail, and he had spent the earlier part of this year making preparations for a limited attack against the Bulgarians, which seemed promising, especially with the Germans pulling out troops from the region to use in their Western Front offensives. But now, desperate Frankie was finally in charge of what had been his idea nearly 4 years ago. And now, in addition to the Allied forces already there, he had 250,000 Greek troops, and he was now demanding from Paris permission for a major offensive. They hadn't said anything definite yet, but with Americans arriving by the hundreds of thousands in France, none of his troops were really going to be needed over there. So he keeps on asking. There might soon be action for the gardeners. I want to get back to diseases, though, and ones that were not region-specific. Now, there's this idea that many young men left for the war and died on the battlefields as virgins. This is largely a myth. If they were virgins when they left home, they most probably were not by the time they met their fate. If you didn't have the luck to meet a local the normal way, there were plenty of other options. On all of the fronts and on all sides, brothels were not only tolerated, they were systematically organized and in some cases even regulated by the armies to keep them as clean and as healthy as possible. There is the inevitable fact that young fighting men facing potential death will do whatever they can to get some comfort and solace in the arms of another. But the customs of the different nations' armies made for different ways of dealing with that. The French, for example, had been issuing condoms to the troops to fight disease and prevent unwanted pregnancies as a standard part of equipment since the end of the 19th century. The Germans, the Russians, the Austrians, the Italians, all of those have been handing out condoms. Nations that do not do so for reasons of supposed morality are the nations of the Commonwealth and the United States.
Come on. I mean, the U.S. makes sense. We're a fucking mess, but like Britain, you're just to fucking skip over from France. Why don't you? What the fuck?
And this has pretty serious consequences. Here are some numbers that might surprise you. During the war, 416,891 soldiers of the British Empire's army were admitted to hospital for treatment of venereal disease. Yep, over 400,000. Compare that to just 74,711 cases of the more spoken of condition, trench foot.
Oh shit. I've never heard those numbers before. At least I've never heard them just compared to each other before like that. That makes it fucking funny, man. That's pretty funny.
Canadian soldiers who were better paid than, well, their English counterparts, for example, and thus can afford more visits to brothels, and who also can't go home to their sweethearts on leave because they're overseas, they had it worse. In 1915, they have a venereal...
Doesn't hand out condoms because of morality. Has sweethearts at home, goes and cheats on them anyway. Morality, yeah.
disease infection rate of 22%. Consider also the amount of cases of VD that were not treated. Some diseases like chlamydia or syphilis...
I want to see. Better look at that graph here. Oh, is this still the British?
Some diseases like chlamydia or
Born after enlistment in 5 NA camp.
syphilis, they present little or no symptoms initially. There's also the embarrassment and shame that stops many from seeking treatment. And although many other armies are handing out condoms, that's not a foolproof solution either. First of all, you have to actually use the condoms.
Yeah.
And even if you do, in the 19 teens, condoms are less than perfect. So the soldiers bring the diseases back home with predictable results, and you get epidemics of venereal.
Yeah, but still, it's still good to use them. It's still good to use them. Like, out today, they're not perfect. It isn't too difficult to break it, but you still use it.
Disease among civilians all over the world. And it's not like civilians don't have enough to worry about as it is. Even in countries that were technically no longer part of the war, like Russia, there was still war going on all over, much of it fought by civilians, and all of it affecting daily life. On the 6th, the Allies declared Vladivostok, far to the east, a protectorate. Woodrow Wilson suggests the Japanese send 12,000 troops to aid the Czechoslovak Legion that's been making its way across Russia eastward, and Japan accepts. The Legion was fighting and beating the Bolsheviks all week in Siberia, occupied Irkutsk the 8th, and under General Horvat proclaimed a new Siberian government at Grodekovo, northwest of Vladivostok, the 10th. They captured Kazan the 12th and now control the Siberian Railway east of Penza. Also, the Bolsheviks declared martial law in Moscow this week after the German ambassador there was assassinated. Gotta say a bit about that here. On July 6, 2 members of the Left Socialist Revolutionary Party entered the embassy and killed Ambassador Count Wilhelm von Mirbach. He had taken part in the Brest-Litovsk negotiations earlier this year and became ambassador in April. Over the following days...
Was there no security for the man? Like, even back then? I know it's a long time ago, but still, it feels like in an embassy, in a country that is struggling and fighting itself like Russia is at this point, that at the very least you would also assign some security to your embassies. Ugh.
After the assassination, troops loyal to the left SRs seized the Moscow Post and the Telegraph, but the Bolsheviks soon re-established control. These events are the final split between these two once allies and were a big step toward the establishment of a one-party system in Russia. The left SRs and the Bolsheviks certainly described it differently on July 8th. The left SRs.
Of course they did.
The executioner of the laboring Russian people has been assassinated by the avenging hand of a revolutionary, just on the day and the hour when the death sentence of the laboring masses was finally being signed, and all the wealth of the laboring people were being surrendered to the German landowners and capitalists. The Bolsheviks. The insane rising of the so-called left SRs has been suppressed. They go on, and there's a link in the description to read the whole thing, but that first sentence pretty much sums up their whole attitude. Historians still question the purpose of his assassination, though. Was it part of an attempt to take power? Was it to coincide with the right SR uprising in Yaroslav, as historian E.H. Carr implies? Though we talked a lot about the big split between the left and right SRs over the winter. Was it to provoke the Germans into canceling the Brest-Litovsk Treaty and attacking Russia, and then removing the Soviets from power by war? Well, whatever it was, the Bolsheviks saw it as a betrayal, and soon will have removed all SRs from any positions of power in Russia. And as the Bolsheviks reestablished control...
I also wouldn't... it sounds like there was very much a specific political message the left SRs wanted to send. But I also could see it just being 2 dudes, a part of the left SR political organization, political party, just like, yo, fuck Germans, and just going up and killing the closest German dude. Sending their own personal message, that then spirals into something bigger. I could see that being possibility. But yeah, with the split between the left and the right SRs, I don't think it coordinates with the uprising of the right. Um, kind of, I personally lean more towards, and just with the information that we've got available, and me not being a World War I historian, I kind of lean more towards the probably just two dudes, part of the left SR political party that were like, fuck Germans, and just went and killed a German, an important German, which then spiraled out of control. And obviously, based off what we also know of the Bolsheviks, wouldn't be too surprised to hear the Bolsheviks also using something that really was not a political move by the left SRs, but they then spin it as to be a political move by the left SRs, so that the Bolsheviks can then gain further control by using that as an excuse to martial law. This is my thoughts.
And as the French and Italians launch a minor but successful series of attacks in southern Albania, the week comes to an end. A week of flu, malaria, and venereal disease in the summer sunshine. But you know, soldiers weren't just affected by naturally occurring diseases. They were creating diseases themselves. I read in Martin Gilbert's The First World War that on July 12th, the Allies premiered a new method of gas warfare. They used a train, and the train's cars were loaded with gas cylinders. This was brought up by light rail to the war zone, and then the cars manually pushed up close to the front. Then they detonated 5,000 gas cylinders at once, and a huge gray cloud formed and rolled across to the Germans, widening as it went. It worked well, causing hundreds of casualties. Someone in one of the gas companies, anonymously, wrote this about their work that day. Science of the ages, the highest arts of man, degraded and prostituted, that might should take the van, while empire, justice, freedom slumbered. Then chemist, student, artisan answered duty's call. Our arms, our arts, our poison fumes gained liberty for all. I'd like to thank Spartacus Olson for the research on venereal disease and the war. If you'd like to learn more about one of the Serbian generals that fought at the Salonica front, you can click right here.
And that was the Gardeners of Salonica prepare a new offensive. The Great War, week 207. This was a good week. Had some things to talk about here. Yeah, there was a good bit going on here that had a room for discussion. So yeah, this was a good week. But nothing else to say here at the end. I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.